Okay, so yes, I am working on a Call of Duty video, but I've been sidetracked a lot lately with a lot of movie releases that I've been seeing at the theater. And so, like last week, it was Expendables 4 or Expendables, and now this week it's The Creator. And surprisingly, a couple months ago, when I saw the trailer drop for this online, like, I had never heard of this movie. I had no idea what this movie was when I saw the trailer and I watched it. I'm just like, why have I not heard about this movie? It's just, it seemed wrong that I didn't know about this movie. So, definitely this was one of those films that I want to go see in the theaters. So, yes, I'm pushing back some of my other planned videos. Going into The Creator, there were moments in this movie that I felt could have made this like an all-time classic masterpiece like 2001: Space Odyssey and Blade Runner. But there were times in this movie that I felt like, yeah, this really is holding this film back. So, let's get into it.
This is a fight for our very existence.
Sergeant Taylor, we are this close to winning the war. But the AI are developing a super weapon. Retrieve it, or they win.
Okay, so for starters, going into this movie, finding out what the movie's budget was so mind-blowing to me. So, for example, the film I reviewed last, Expendables 4. If you were to come up to me and go, hey buddy, how much do you think that movie cost after seeing it? I would have been saying, honestly, with the quality of the effects and the stunt work and the location, the sets, I don't know, 20 to 30 million. And, you know, objectively, and then to find out that, yeah, Expendables 4 cost $100 million. So, you could guess by surprise if you were to come up to me after seeing this movie, The Creator, and going, hey, how much do you think this movie costs? I would have flat out easily said, this thing costs like $300 to $400 million to make. Come to find out, this thing only cost $80 million to make. Like, this movie costs less money to make than The Expendables 4. But the quality is just so much higher than that movie. Like, that's what the quality felt like. And just that aspect alone is just mind-blowing thinking about it. But, like, this gets to one of the best aspects of this movie is this crew. The people who made this movie, the director, the cameraman, the producers, they had like the greatest budget managers in the history of Hollywood on this film, because they squeezed every penny that they could out of that 80 million. I mean, when you look at this movie, it's like, oh my gosh, they got this movie to look like this on that small of a Hollywood budget, and it is just mind-blowing. And like, one of the things I found out is the camera they used for this movie is a Sony FX3. If you're not into cameras, just understand that on average from Sony themselves, you can get an FX3 for $3,900. That's it, $3,900. Granted, that's without a lens and without, you know, a couple of other accoutrements, but you can get the camera that they used to film this movie for under $5,000, which is amazing. And also goes to show that maybe Hollywood doesn't need to be using $20,000 cameras anymore or $40,000 cameras anymore. Maybe they could start doing movies on Sony FX3s or Panasonic GH6s, which is what I'm filming on. Like, my camera, the GH6, is like of equal quality to a Sony FX3. And you're probably thinking, dude, your film quality is nowhere near as good as this film. I'm still dealing with lighting and focal points and focusing and whatnot. Like, there's a lot I have to learn with this camera still to come. But like, honestly, the camera you're watching me on right now is of like equal quality to the camera used in this film. So like, if you're interested in making movies, it's getting more and more affordable to do so. But like, another amazing thing about this film and about how they were able to manage this budget is the top tier level CGI. Like, for the past 10 years, I feel kind of ashamed admitting this, but like with every movie that utilizes heavy amounts of CGI, I've kind of just started to accept the fact that, yeah, in every movie you're going to see a couple of bad shots. Especially with superhero movies. Like, with superhero movies, you're going to see a lot of bad visual effects, along with some good ones, but a lot of bad ones. And like, Avatar 2 was kind of like an oddity, because like 99% of that film, the CGI was good, finally, in a while. And it's like, I kind of miss the days of like the mid-2000s with like CGI was like top tier back then, and they've just kind of dropped in quality. Well, with the creator, I'm really struggling to think of a exact moment in this movie where one frame of CGI looked bad. Like, every single CGI shot feels top level, top tier, outstanding. There are some truly amazing visual effect shots in this movie, and they do not cheap out on the CGI whatsoever. They do an exceptional job making sure that every CGI shot is amazing. And I would say that money was they spared no expense with the money in CGI, but no, they actually did, because this movie only cost $80 million to make. Like, seriously, Hollywood has no excuse anymore. They should use this movie as a blueprint on how to manage money for a Hollywood film. And so, like, getting into kind of the meat and bones of the story, like, John David Washington, I've seen some of his other films. Like, they've been okay. Like, he did a decent job in Black Klansman, but, like, where he shines for me is in science fiction. And, like, I absolutely loved him in Tenet, and I had fun with him in this. And, like, honestly, if all he ever did for the foreseeable future was science fiction, I would be perfectly happy with that. And then, I always like to point this out when I see one, because child actors, typically they suck, and on a few cases, they are complete fucking dog shit, like the ones from WandaVision and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Like, oh my gosh, I feel like tearing out my ears and eyes whenever I see acting that fucking bad. But every now and then you get a child actor that's really solid and really nails it. And in the creator, the child actor who's like one of the leads in this film, she kills every scene she's in. Like, there was never a time I thought she fumbled a line at all. And this is like her first movie. So like, this kid, if they keep with movies, they are going places. Because, I mean, talk about some really solid child acting in this film. But getting more into like the world and this universe of the creator, the universe has this like very lived in vibe to it, but it's also insanely enthralling. Like, just this universe is almost addictive to get into. I mean, like, the first half hour of this film is fantastic. I would probably absolutely nothing about it. And the first half hour does this excellent job of like just setting up this world, this future Earth, and like how things are working and whatnot. And it is so enthralling. But one of my criticisms is it needed more, especially when it gets into some of the plot holes, which I'll talk about later on. But like, honestly, like, the thing I was most fascinated by this entire movie was the world itself. I won't call it a character, but the world itself was what was keeping me hooked, because there's just this like future that I was just getting like the surface scratched on. And honestly, I was hoping for more of a deep dive into this world. Now, one thing I didn't like about this movie, or that's not fair. I should say the one thing that I was a little uneven about with this movie is the trope that's being done to death. The loner, gruff character transporting a child to a location trope. Like, it's not exactly a dead horse, but it feels like a dying horse that people are kicking to death. Look, back in 2013, it was cool when they did with The Last of Us. The good one, not the shitty one. Alright? It was cool when they did with The Mandalorian. It was, you know, kind of cool when they did it with Death Stranding and with Logan. And, like, it's a story element that is interesting and I like, but it's starting to really get kicked into the ground now. And, like, even with Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, which I'm in the middle of right now, they're just doing The Last of Us, but in France with Daryl Dixon. Like, that's kind of what they're doing, and it's starting to get old, guys, okay? It's not quite the love triangle old, but it's getting there. Like, it'd be nice to have, like, a good 10-year period before we see another one, which I know is not going to happen, but, like, I'm getting to the point where I'm about to say I'm done with the gruff loner transporting an innocent child across a violent environment. And the creator, that's what the story is. It's about this gruff loner that has to transport this child across a violent environment. And I like that story, but it's being done to death. This gets me to one of the other characters that I absolutely love. Allison Janney, if I'm pronouncing her name right. Her character, whose name I don't remember in this movie because she doesn't get enough screen time for me to remember her name, but she plays this, like, hardened veteran, like, by the numbers, do anything, get the job done type of character. And, like, she does a really awesome job in this movie. It's one of the times where a strong female character is done right. I like to point out those times because I have a lot of criticisms of the strong female character trope that's been very popular the past couple of years. I do like to point out when a movie does actually nail the landing with a strong female character, and they totally nail it with Allison Janney. Like, she was freaking awesome. And I won't say she's the antagonist, but she is an antagonistical character in this movie, but, like, she has, like, a point of view that honestly makes a lot of sense to me, and she even has, like, a moment of real humanity, emotion, and, like, sympathy that, like, just is almost, like, soul-crushing, and, like, she fucking kills that scene. And so, like, she was a really entertaining, fascinating character. I loved every scene she was in, but here's the issue. She's not in the movie that much. And, like, they could have done a lot of really interesting things with this character, but they don't. And this leads me to my biggest problem of the movie. The thing that stops this from becoming one of those films that could very well be one day, like, the next masterpiece, but it doesn't, is to avoid spoilers. There are two factions in this movie. There's Faction A and Faction B. I don't want to tell you what the factions are because I think you should try and go into this movie as fresh as humanly possible, but the reason why I'm not telling you the factions is because my next point would kind of really lay out the movie for you. So there's Faction A and Faction B. And in the first half hour, Faction A and Faction B are kind of like at the same level. And they have equal points of flaws and sympathy. And so in the first half hour of this movie, I was seeing like a potential for this movie to divide the audience. Where after the movie was done, you have two friends walking out. It's like, dude, I think side A was right. And it's like, no, I think side B was actually correct. And you have had some pretty interesting, like, almost morality discussions with audience members. But the problem is, the movie does not maintain this. As the movie goes along, side A is like raised up higher and higher, where it's just pure and good, and there's absolutely nothing humanly wrong with side A whatsoever. It's perfect in every way. And then side B, it's just like degraded more and more and more into it being so pure fucking evil that by the end of the movie, they just come off as cartoonishly evil, like Saturday morning cartoonishly evil. And the movie really missed an amazing opportunity here, having really amazing, like, moral philosophical questions with both sides. Like, if you support this side, you're supporting the potential for this, this, and this. If you support this side, you will get this, but you're also supporting the potential for this, this, and this. And this movie really could have made this a thinking man's movie. And unfortunately, it doesn't. It just degrades it to one side, good. This side, bad. You want to root for good side. You want to hate bad side. Do you feel like a fucking idiot yet? And like, honestly, like, walking out of the theater, I was just asking myself, yeah, you want me to side with Faction A, but why should I? Like, honestly, kind of have more in common with Faction B, to be completely honest. But you want me to side with Faction A, and I didn't feel like there was a good argument to truly make me side with Faction A. You have the shallow reasons, like, oh, well, they're not as mean as Faction B. Okay, but, like, give me a real reason why I should side with Faction A. And I feel like at times I didn't quite get that. I had some pleasantries, like saying, oh, well, you know, if you side with Faction A, nothing terrible is going to happen. Okay, but, like, I need a better argument than that, okay? And another thing that really, really pissed me off was the movie begins with an incident. And this incident is like the defining factor of like every character in this story. Like, it is the reason why this story is happening. It is the catalyst for this story. And there's like a mystery behind this incident. Why did this incident happen? How did it happen? Like, what was behind it? And partway through the movie, you get a blink and you'll miss it explanation of like, oh, you know that happened because of this, right? It's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, it happened because of this. Okay, I need a lot more than that. Yeah, no, we're just going to move on. Wait a minute, you can't just say that and not explain it. It's like, yeah, we're just moving on. So I'm not going to get a how, I'm not going to get a why. No, it's just this, you were moving on. And it's like, no, I have to hold that against the movie. I needed more on that. Now, Grant, I'm glad they didn't turn it into like this big comical surprise, like, oh, this was actually a trick. I'm so glad they didn't do that. But this leads to some other, like, serious loopholes. Like, yeah, one of the factions is like this world government, and the other faction is this like guerrilla resistance. But like, where are the other world governments in this world? Okay, like, yeah, there's this government, but like, you're going over to these other countries that have clearly advanced cities, but like, there's no government. Like, they don't explain that. And at one point they insinuate like the rebels are part of that government, but they aren't. They're like a rebel group. And it's like, look, I needed a lot more world building and world explanation, because like, literally, you got people like dropping nukes everywhere, and it's like, okay, just one nuke would have caused like a huge uproar in like the world economic stability. And you don't get that. It just kind of feels like the Empire rules the entire planet. And okay, is that the case? Like, that's never explained. Plot holes. There was a couple more of those, but like, that was kind of the biggest one. And then finally, like, because of the previous issues, the third act is just a tad chaotic and rough and a little disappointing. I don't hate what they were trying to do with the third act. I just feel like the third act could have been tying it up a little bit better, had a couple more obstacles, and like I'm trying not to ruin it, but like I feel like security was a bit lax after a certain point. And I feel like the third act probably should have had a little bit more screen time and should have been tied up a little bit better. Especially since the ending is so incredibly abrupt. Like, the final scenes are just so abrupt. Without spoiling this movie, I'm going to spoil a little bit of Lord of the Rings, so if you haven't seen Lord of the Rings, go watch it now. But in the third Lord of the Rings movie, you know, the one with the 27 endings, imagine if that movie ended like Frodo destroys the One Ring, Sam carries him out of Mount Doom, falls down the rock, and then without even having a speech with each other, the movie just ends. Like, that is how freaking abrupt this ending is. And it's just like, yeah, I would have liked to see another 5 minutes of, like, seeing the world resolve after that, or seeing, like, a explanation of what happens next after that, instead of just the abrupt ending. And so, you know, overall, I had a lot of fun with this movie. I thought there was some really great aspects to this movie, especially with the technical aspect of this movie. The CGI is top tier level, and the fact that they managed this budget so efficiently well, like, I want every Hollywood production to use this as a blueprint on how to finance their movies from now on, because they managed to keep the budget under $100 million, but they managed to make it look like a $300 million sci-fi epic. And that alone is amazing and worth watching this movie. Is this movie perfect? No. It could have been a masterpiece, but it wasn't. But there is enough excellent aspects to this film to warrant watching it. You may not agree with my final score, but I think there are some aspects to this film that do warrant this score. So, anyway, that's been my review of The Creator. My name's Chris O'Connell with 11 Hour Views. Sing out down in the comments below what you thought of this movie, if you agreed or disagreed with any of my opinions, and that will be all for today.